Okay, thank you so much for being here to listen to me. Actually, I was planning to show much more about my research work, but I changed my mind because I already spoke with two people which are important in my thesis, which are my scientific coordinators, or from CTA, which is the Committee of Scientific Evaluation of my work. I already spoke to them. So I'll bring here today is one part of my research work, some of the findings that I brought last week to the industry, meaning industry, all the stakeholders involved in high-speed trains, in the product development of the train, the vehicle. And when I speak about high-speed trains, I speak about a technology system that is the vehicle embedded in the infrastructure, interfacing with an infrastructure, and part of an overall transport system. And more than that, it's the technology which transports individuals on a collective mode from A to B. And it was very interesting, the experience to bring social issues to the engineering world. 100% of the people in this conference where I was last week was engineers. From the governmental decision makers, maybe not all, but when they are in transportation, many of them, they are engineers. From the academia world they are engineers, and as well from the industry, the manufacturers, component suppliers, and they are engineers. So I will give you as well some of the reactions I had on my presentation, and this is what I came what I went to tell them is my presentation of today. So I went to tell them, look, we are now living a new paradigm, which is extending the notion of market success, and what is the paradigm is digitalization and social innovation. And I present to them my arguments based on my survey, and I did some conclusions and I made some recommendations to them. So this is my thesis in a nutshell. So in the first slide, what I gave to the industry was actually, look guys, we are here on the extended notion of market success from digitalization of society is really disrupting the way products and services are being selected. No longer the same way as before. No longer engineering for engineers, it's more engineers for society and for interfacing other types of engineering and business models, all in one. And actually in constructive technology assessment, I always refer to the same authors, Deuton, Rip, Gelsma, they have a paper, which one of the schemes in their paper is something like this. They say there is different environments of product selection. You have your product, you are developing it, you have to select in business and engineering, you have to select in terms of regulations. And again, another filter for product success, for new technology success, no doubt is wider society. But guess what? In high-speed trains, wider society was almost excluded from product selection. They were hermetic from wider society. They were protected. And well, if you might have the best technology as this mode of transport that we just had the presentation on, but if it's not embedded in an overall system, and here the overall system refers definitely to everything is integrating within digital platforms, your technology will not succeed. But the industry is now trying to deal with these new trends. They are figuring out how to embed digitalization, social innovation in their product creation. They are trying to create value out of social networks. This is a trend in all industries. It's not only for high-speed trains, but this is a graph that is not made by me, it's made from Eurostat statistics in a report, and I just extracted transportations and manufacturing, which are the two sectors that filter. Shall I speak lower? Am I speaking too loud? I have someone. Okay. And if you look into the data or the statistics to see how society is being integrated in product development, we see it's very low. It's the green, and in these two sectors in specific, it's below average. And what about high-speed trains, where the industry is standing? What is the trend? This is what I will show you in my next 3 slides. So I went to do a survey, I went to ask to the people in the industry. You have governments, here is the European Union, national governments. You have here component suppliers, manufacturers from main solutions. I refer here to Siemens, to Alstom, and Saldobreda, CAF. And also you have the component suppliers. In my survey, I don't know why, or maybe I do. It was a lot of people supplying components for interiors and telematics in the train. Some of materials as well. I went to ask as well train operators, universities, regulatory bodies. So 11 types of stakeholders. Also I asked for the end user, but I didn't use it in the statistic I will show you today. So I asked them, what are your drivers for research and development? And guess what? Social aspects are the second drivers for research. They are after business and engineering, but above regulations. For me, it was very interesting, this result. I was not expecting. I was more expecting business and engineering, second regulations, because in the high-speed train, we were living some hot moments in terms of standardization and regulations pushing new technologies for integrated system, but now it's society second. And society, however, appears that this presents the aggregated numbers. Within these, you have to distinguish the different stakeholders. I don't present here today because it's a lot of information, it's a full day of a presentation. So if you go into each individual respondents groups, what you find is that universities are the one actually giving high priority to social aspects, where manufacturers are the ones on the bottom of the list, and governments in between. That was very interesting to notice, and will reflect as well the results along the other slides. Another question I made, okay, now you told me the drivers, what about the social requirements through the technology development process? From the initial stage of collecting data and basic principles to the final stage in terms of the integration of the product in the market. High-speed trains are not yet are over the stage of concept, is implemented technology, solid, it exists, so you can really inquire everyone on the different stages of product development. And here I refer very much to AGV and IC3 350, so are the latest models of trains in the market. And what happens is that you have a fluctuation in terms of society values through the technology development process. Quite important, and at the peak of the relevance, at initial stage where everyone is gathering data, as we saw here in the previous presentation, everyone knows about the trends, what are the influencing factors in terms of society, but then things are put aside, and we have a minimum on the technology readiness level 4, which is the validation of the technology So before they were very much focused, when they are very much focused on why do I need to innovate, the social aspects are very relevant, and then when they already have this established and they really go into lab, they really go to do some demonstrations and validations and tests, things tend to be put aside in technology readiness level 4, and then regains momentum, but at less relevance level than in the initial stage. When the technology is mature, let's bring it to market. Very interesting to see this. Again, manufacturing very strong in keeping all the time the business and engineering at the top of their list of priorities when they do this technology validations, assessments in the technology gates, they call, evaluation gates. And where component suppliers, interesting to see, they are the ones actually looking into social requirements along the process of development. Again, reflecting maybe the fact that the ones who responded to my survey are very focused on interiors and telematics. Another question I made, and this is the last slide, I will have this slide and another one, and then I go to the conclusions. What about alignment with society? When you do alignment with society, what do you consider? Well, everyone considers that alignment on society is beneficial as an early indication of public acceptance. Do you know what does it mean? promotion and control. So everyone who's responding this, the majority of the people, they really want to monitor society because of promotion and control. Why do I say this? Where is the basis of my argumentation? You go here on the when society is monitored to share research and development paths. If this rating would have been higher, that would be more monitoring of society in terms of orchestration and mutual learning. Interesting as well to find in this slide is that manufacturers, when you really break down these numbers by the different stakeholders, is that manufacturers, they show very high support in terms of alignment with society as an indication of public acceptance, but also in terms of high concerns on risks of confidentiality being disclosed and risks on negative reactions and costs of re-engineering. So we would expect this to happen anyway. Let me see if there is anything I'm forgetting.
So this alignment with society is from the perspective of the industry?
All the stakeholders. This is the aggregated figures. But I'm giving you the highlights. There is one thing I knew that I didn't want to forget in this slide, is why I'm checking on my notes. There was one thing that is not here shown because at the conference I had no time to say, but I refer to, is the fact that I also asked what was how informal or formal was your relation, the respondents, so the universe of stakeholders in the development of the train. What was the formal or informal relation with society, with these emergent stakeholders? Actually, it's very informal. Why? Because 70% of the respondents, they said they interacted with social actors. They actually do surveys, they go conferences, they go and showcase, they do demos, etc. 61%, so a decrease on the trend, stated that they recognize even the social stakeholders as a stakeholder. Actually, the industry has been quite active when it was the environmental groups, late 90s, early 2000s, where you have Greenpeace, you have other groups like neighborhoods that are crossed by the train, they interact. But, and this is why they respond so high at these two factors, but however, a small percentage, 35%, said I actually employ someone to monitor social alignment. And even less, 16% of all universe of stakeholders, they said, you know, we have, only 30% said we have gates with social requirements that we identified at early stage through all out, they are kept, we are reviewing them through the technology development process. Only 30%. So major finding here, which for me was a novelty, was like really informal alignment with social actors. And it's why there is room for improvement, is the second suggestion I made in my PhD thesis, dissertation. And these percentages of who actually has someone employed and actually is the ones that have the gates for social evaluation are component suppliers, a small number of them, high number of consultancies, and railway associations. Very interesting. This, for me, it was very interesting. Okay, last one. And what about social embedding in strategic formulations? When you do your strategy, how do you consider society? Here, anticipation is a very key element when you do this type of exercises. And what we have seen, or what I have seen from this survey, is that mapping and monitoring social environments is quite relevant for the high-speed train industry. Actually, when I started my PhD thesis, the first preliminary thing, speaking with people, I was like, they already do technology assessment. But actually they don't. And this slide is where I show you why not. And so, you know, however, there is a decrease, and then I will tell you at the end what were the questions were made to me in my presentation at the conference on high-speed trains. It's very interesting as well. So there is a decrease on the responses in the graph of yes or no, and a decrease on the responses on yes, an increase on maybe, which for me is a no, and a still no answers. What would have been if we had social embedding for strategic formulation? If it actually happened, which it doesn't, what we'd have to have? We'd have to have stimulate mutual learning much higher in the percentages of responses. So this graph would have to be almost straight curves in order to have it constructive technology assessment being performed. And don't forget again, technology assessment is managing innovation in society. And this requires mutual learning through orchestration. So, in conclusion, and to finish my presentation, high-speed train industry is risking not meeting the new emerging demands. And this is the title of my presentation here today. Because it requires integrating the social aspects within the technology development process. Well, now the question, very tricky, I didn't know how to reply, but I still don't know how to reply until I test it, is my recommendations. This is this in my PhD thesis is the most weak part of it. And I've been also brainstorming with other people. We have done it in nanotechnology. And how can we bring it to the high-speed train industry? So when I went to the UIC conference in Tokyo, I want to promote this experiment in the industry. And what I recommend to them in my presentation was how to add value from digital society. I didn't went through so much philosophical aspects of responsible innovation because the industry will not listen to me. They will not care. So I said, let's create value through social embedding. I cannot stop high-speed trains because they're already there, but the industry is at the moment is actually fearing threats from 20 million users of car sharing and carpooling, blah, 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 has 20 million users in France, and CNCF was in the conference saying, we are creating this common platform that we want to provide door-to-door transportation, no longer high-speed trains transportation, creating the ecosystem of transportation. And maybe we don't need a new transport mode. Maybe this master plan in Turkey is really giving you the hints that the European Commission is already pushing, is towards interfacing and through intelligent transportation, minimizing, not maximizing the speed, but minimizing the travel time. So, to conclude, in my recommendations, I have to give you clearly what was behind. I really want to bring this to Shift to Rail. Shift to Rail is the evolution of the technology platform in the industry called ERAC, which brainstorms visions, roadmaps, what is the future technology to be supported through PPP funding schemes, European Commission, national governments, industry. And I said to them, let's do this social embedding in product development process in your visions, in your research projects, when you do it at collective level. Because in my thesis I present the different levels of technology development. You do it in-house, you do it on bilateral, you do it on consortiums. Let's do this on consortiums. And then to do that, enlarge your business network to include social actors when mapping your visions and enlarging in research and development projects. For that, you need is the sub-bullet points tailor these interactions to suit the technology readiness level in which your product is. The industry has been this past 18 years developing interoperability. And now we need to demonstrate that this interoperability works, and let's put these social networks and this innovative society in this process. Move towards also a stabilizing design trajectory by introducing evaluation gates through product development. and draw, and this is one of the messages, on a third-party expertise to orchestrate it. So if you are in a university, if you are in the industry, if you are a train operator, if you are a government, bring social science university or players to your research projects. Will never be the research project in itself, but within your dissemination activities, give one task to these social scientists to come and assess and bring the methodologies they have to actually monitor what is at stake, how can you embed the technology within the overall system. And this is my presentation. Do you want to hear the questions I had? And from whom? Do I have time? So, 3 questions. I need to go. 3 questions I had. I have 15 minutes. 3 questions I had. One I know from Siemens. I will not tell you which question I had from Siemens. I had one from Siemens. And I didn't have one question on the conference, but someone from Alstom came to speak to me. So, what will be the next generation of high-speed trains before I go into the questions? Maybe just a seat, a USB plug, and broadband to the outside world through internet. Okay? This is where we are. This is what I bring from the high-speed train conference where I was last week. This does not mean that what is the industry wants. This means that this is a technology trend. And Siemens, in the opening session, or actually in the closing session, they said, we are now investing on smart interface of transport systems. Differently from Alstom, but is also the business strategy. One is more mobility oriented, the other is really engineering. Well, 3 questions I got. Someone told me, in your graphs I don't see so much difference, variations between social integration and non-social integration. I said you would find them if you look into the breakdown of the stakeholders. Actually, this gave me an idea. Next time I go, if I need to go to Brussels to present this, which I was already selected for TRA 2016 in Milano, I will do that. I'll just put in this graph the manufacturing. I will have another curve identifying a specific stakeholder within the overall trend. So that was a good question, and I will take it as well in future presentations. A second question was, how do we protect confidential information, coloring dilemma? If you give the information about the technology too early, or if you give too late, what happens? You disclose, you create negative reactions. It's why you need the third-party assessment. Maybe social actors, they don't even know exactly what is the technology we are referring to. Something to speculate and to reformulate in this debate I'm having with nanotechnology, with these researchers that actually implementing it in the field already. And another question was how to do it. How do I do this dialogue with society? Well, the do it is here on the recommendations. Not even myself, I know how to do it, so I'll ask people from other departments, either KIT, Schiphol from the Transport Forum is already kind of doing it, not yet doing it, with some of the players who were in this conference, but still not there. Maybe I'll bring someone else from other sectors, like Douglas Robinson. We'll find a way of doing. We'll experiment, because also for us this is new. So thank you so much for your time.
It was thank you. It's very interesting and very simple, focused. It's quite good. Yeah, but it's because you don't have so much time left. There are some examples where these recommendations seems very important. Once you know how these technical systems are being developed, or which type of limitations do they have. Because usually we think on high-speed trains as the perfect machines that run and they have more or less the same type of standards, which is not true at all if you are using these kind of systems. First of all, if you compare the systems from Shinkansen to the European ones, they are totally different, and I wonder the strategy that companies that manufacture them used or not users as stakeholders. I would say yes, or at least the engineers or designers of these Shinkansen, they are more interested on user expectations, which I think they are because they are Japanese, first of all. Why I say this? For example, if you compare one system to the others, they have more space for users. In second class, of course, first class is not so different from second class, but second class is much better, even on the way of using your luggage and this type of concepts. Well, it's more comfortable when you talk about comfort. Shinkansen, then the most advanced Siemens or whatsoever, Alstom in Europe. Then you have also other technical problems. I don't know so much about Shinkansen, but ICE in Europe, and I think also AVE in Spain, they have problems when there is too much heat. It's warmer weather, and then you start to have problems. Or in the other way around, when it's too much cold and you have problems. Then there is also a connection with the infrastructure, also the lines, the transmission of energy, and so forth. And the third is the management system, transport, where in most times as user or regular user of ICE system we have problems of time schedules. Usually these very high speed transport systems, they are late. Then you cannot imagine the nightmare that is trying to travel from point A to B in Germany, or to Holland, or with ICE, with this most advanced. It's a nightmare. Sometimes it's nice, but you have to choose the spots and time. Then there is a problem of management of transport system that usually is not take into consideration for the design of the equipment. And when we talk about high-speed trains, we should also have in mind the infrastructure of energy distribution, the equipment and comfort, and the management of transport, and the interoperability and the connection. That's why this is one of the most important reasons that people are flying away from high-speed trains, not only because of these automobile private ones, but mostly in Germany it is to the buses, intercity buses. Why? Because there were laws, and that's why ICE and Siemens won so much money with this business, because it was forbidden to exist until very recently to have buses for intercity communication. We thought, well, in Portugal we use it. It's cheaper, it's very comfortable. But in Germany it was forbidden. You could not. There were many legal problems, and that's why ICE and the high-speed trains were very easy to go. That's why I also asked you to make these comparisons with the Japanese system and with other systems that are not yet developed, as in US, for example. They don't have this. They are just starting. They don't have high-speed trains. We would wonder why in US they don't use it. Well, because of the cars, because of this infrastructure, the cultural tradition of using private transport system and not collective transport system, and then to with these far distances, they prefer to use air transport and so forth. Then you have these elements of different cultures which play a role, and you don't mention here, and they are a component of the social embeddedness of these technological options. They are technological options, but I would say they are related with these social stakeholders or societal stakeholders. That's why it's interesting, your recommendations, but probably in your thesis you should include these aspects and some questions also related with these topics that I'm mentioning to you. No? As you now know about Japan, I don't know if you traveled there, but okay.
No, although they manage
no, for example,
to arrive to these recommendations. If I start studying the Japanese, maybe
not studying, but I didn't study. I didn't study even the issue. I was just using the systems, and then we understand why things are so different. Why I'm going to a Shinkansen and he arrives just in time, and you have much more a number of trains to the same destination per day.
They are completely integrated. They are very well integrated.
Yeah, but they are more intelligent. The technology, the material of steel is better. No, it's not that. It's another philosophy around this technology development, integrating these social dimensions, I would say.
You know, in Europe, the high-speed trains are very fragmented. In my PhD thesis, I do I do analysis of the technology transitions from train number 1, TGV ICE1, to the latest generation of trains, and you really see hardware technology being developed, and then another shift in 2001 from history in the introduction in 91, and then you see a shift in 2001 towards a more strategic way of interoperability. So from problem solving to planning for this interoperability asset. Plus you have to integrate systems from all over Europe, which are quite diverse. What do you see from the manufacturing side, more than actually the train operator side? From the manufacturing side, you see that they really pushed, they saw this opportunity to provide standard platforms of trains, where actually the train operator just gives small specifications, this is their dream, and then they adapt the train. The fact is that only Alstom offers like 18 variations of the TGV, including the AGV in these variations. They didn't even call it a new generation of trains, even if in the thesis I argue they are. And actually, you see, they are very much worried and taken by other things than actually are taken by the engineering questions moved by these regulations and shift on regulatory schemes that has impacted the business since 2001. While the Japanese, they are a single national system, is like if I did a S-curve analysis, I think S-curves are very interesting to see in terms of technology development. Where are you? What is the trend? Japan, Shinkansen, is really flattening the curve. That means they really have stabilized the technology. Major shifts maybe it will not happen unless it's really a substitution of the high-speed train by another mode. While for the AGV and the TGV plus ICE, what I see is that they are still at the peak of their curve. They will start to flattening down, and the fact is that after 2008 and 2006, which is the entry in the market of these trains, they have not yet put out a next generation of train, which they did when they introduced the previous generation of TGV and ICE before the AGV and the IC 350. So what is there? Definitely another tendency also in Europe to flatten. What I see for the Chinese railways, if on this still S-curve, is really a peak of 7 years of really growth, and we never know where it stop, because they are increasing speeds, they are putting out their own technology in the latest generation, while they were doing more others technology. in the first generation of trains, and what is breaking the different technology of trains in my thesis is a reference author, Zoe, which puts on the speeds capability. But also this will now be longer the standard, because there was a compromise in a UIC conference that we don't want to increase speeds of the high-speed train. What we want to increase is the connectivity between point A to point B. So, okay, yeah, I go and see what the Japanese are doing. I need to see what is the strategic visions, what is the mega plans of Japan, what are the different communications from GRC, which is the Japanese railway company, what Hitachi Kawasaki is supplying. Well, I have to decompose everything I did decompose in my own thesis for the European railways. I'm a bit worried.
No, but I'm not saying that I'm not saying that you should again do other case studies. Is to have in mind that these different. It's not just JR, let's say the Japan Railways as a new technology. No, it's the strategy that they followed to develop their systems was probably different from the European ones, but mostly based as a question, not as you cannot verify that empirically, as a question, but based on this societal element. I don't know if they include more stakeholders. I suppose yes, because this is in their underground way of doing business. Is to ask people from all levels, even the external...
even on a job interview, you go to Toyota, then you have to be interviewed by the cleaning lady, the general manager, and the product plan manager. And you actually are taking photocopies as a trainee. So it's really the way the Japanese think.
And that's why they designed a completely more user-friendly, and then people are interested, and the price for each ticket is not so high as in Europe.
Euros just to take a connection.
But
first stop connection on the.
Then see the same type of price in Europe. It's much more expensive, and then that's why this kind of strategy implies a different product, a different technology even, and this is. Well, can be interesting from your point of view, but I would not say don't go for a new case study. This is not possible. Of course not. But as final questions, they are very, very important in your thesis and with policy relevance.
Yeah, you really have to contrast when you do your PhD thesis or your case analysis. You really have to contrast. Actually, there is this book I really recommend you to read in terms of methodology. Is in 2003. Is a Japanese in the US. A Chinese in the US writes about case studies methodology, and one of the weaknesses is that if you don't contrast your case. So Turkey, maybe you need to contrast with someone else. But my contrasting case, actually, as I argue in the thesis, is TGV, AGV. Alstom train, Siemens train. Why? Because they are the technology leaders in Europe. Why I don't go and to explain that I go there because I'm putting the focus of decision making on the manufacturing. And I do a pause here and I breathe, because in Europe, who's deciding the technology on board of the train? The train operator puts the specifications. However, the decision maker who decides actually what is putting in the train is the manufacturer now. Since 2005, 2003. Why? Because of all the business restructuring, all developments, and even the engineers, they went from the train operators, historical, developing the product, to the industry. Alstom, Siemens are employing ex-engineers from DB, Deutsche Bahn, and from SNCF. So what happens is that the decision, and this is one of my argumentation in my thesis, is in the manufacturing. Now go to Japan, decision is in the government. Because I put in a footnote in my PhD thesis that except for Europe, and China goes in the same train as Japan, is why they will leapfrog us really fast, they already did, is because everything is centralized in the government. And they do in their foresighting, and especially Japanese, you gave this class, and there is this book about foresight, which one of the authors is Japanese. They are the masters of foresight, the masters. So, saying that, Europe is very specific, and it's because of that the Japanese want to supply to Europe for ages, and they are not able to do it. Hitachi is now buying some business in UK. They are producing now for the first time in UK. They will be manufacturing in UK for the H2 high-speed line. So it's not easy, Europe. And I think the Japanese will pay to read my thesis because I'm very happy to make some money. Postdoc in Japan, maybe.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is.
I need to go as well. I have.
Yeah. Okay.
Any questions? No. You want to?
Or by email.
Any questions? Methodology questions? I have so many things to say. It's 5 years of work. So I have a lot of things to say if you want to add.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
No, I'm joking.
And next time you see me, you don't have to go in the winter school.
But thank you,
I'm very happy that
Susanna. Yeah.
Siemens really